Ironheart is practically unwatchable. Toot toot, Jerry laughs. Yes, there is an alphabet character. They admit Ironheart sucks, but look, they're getting ready to blame you for it because Ironheart fulfills low expectations with weak narrative, poorly written characters, and dull acting.
So with this, I'm not sure what they're meant to be, because this character isn't to be confused with Slug.
Slug, our hacker extraordinaire.
Who is also the exact opposite in the same show. I'm really confused.
The impacts that she's having on young Black girls, and I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should.
Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark. It's like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through and he's like, who is that? And she's like, I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark. And he's like, I like that girl. And then he like goes to do something else. Like that would be like the level of something that I think would possibly happen.
Disney's $200 million investment in Ironheart was supposed to launch Marvel's next generation of heroes and secure their streaming dominance for years to come. But instead, it became their most humiliating disaster in recent memory. And the shocking reason why has everything to do with what happened behind closed doors between Dominique, Thorne, and Anthony Ramos that nobody saw coming. What you're about to discover will completely change everything you thought you knew about this catastrophic failure, because the real story goes far deeper than just bad reviews or poor writing. It's about betrayal, broken relationships, and how one actress's public meltdown exposed the ugly truth about Marvel's crumbling empire. This isn't just another flop story. This is the moment Disney realized they might have made their biggest casting mistake ever, and the fallout is still destroying careers today. The numbers don't lie, and they paint the most devastating picture of failure that Disney has ever faced with a Marvel property. When Ironheart premiered on Disney Plus with its highly anticipated 3-episode drop, something absolutely unprecedented happened that sent shockwaves through every executive office in Burbank. The show completely failed to chart in the top 10 streaming programs during its debut week, which means a Marvel series with a massive marketing budget and months of promotion didn't even register on the radar of mainstream audiences. This wasn't just a disappointment or a soft opening, it was complete invisibility that made executives question whether they'd fundamentally misunderstood their own audience. But the nightmare was just beginning, because within days, Ironheart plummeted to become the second worst rated MCU series on Disney+.
We already know that those out there like Dominique Thorne, the main actress of the show who plays Riri Williams, after really going after fans and really going after the critics, it's only making matters worse for both Disney and Marvel.
Scraping together a pathetic 56% audience score that made even the most optimistic Disney defenders cringe. By the time the dust settled and all episodes had aired, it had crashed even lower, claiming the title of the worst-rated MCU project ever, with a humiliating 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. Viewership collapsed by over 60% in the second week alone, making it worse than even the Secret Invasion disaster that fans thought couldn't possibly be topped, and merchandising sales were so catastrophically bad that toy stores were literally giving away Ironheart figures just to clear shelf space. The seeds of this catastrophe were planted long before the show ever aired, and it all started with Dominique Thorne's press tour from absolute hell that turned into a masterclass in how to alienate your core fan base. Instead of charming audiences and building genuine excitement for her character, Dominique made a series of tone-deaf statements during interviews that systematically turned Marvel's most dedicated fans against her before they'd even seen a single episode. She boldly compared Ironheart directly to Iron Man in ways that suggested her character was superior, claimed that Riri Williams represented the true next generation of heroes, and downplayed Tony Stark's legacy in comments that came across as pure arrogance to longtime MCU supporters who had invested over a decade in Robert Downey Jr.'s character. The backlash was swift, brutal, and absolutely merciless across every social media platform imaginable. Memes calling her the discount Iron Man and Walmart Tony Stark exploded across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, with hashtags mocking her interviews trending for weeks and generating millions of engagement interactions that were overwhelmingly negative. The situation became so toxic that Disney executives were reportedly furious with her messaging strategy and the PR team that had prepared her talking points. They frantically rushed her into damage control interviews with industry magazines, where she tried desperately to walk back her comments and praise Iron Man's legacy. But it was already far too late, because the internet never forgets, and the toxic buzz around the show had completely replaced any genuine anticipation that might have existed.
The thing about Ironheart is that yes, we do know that the last 3 episodes will be debuting tonight, by the way, really fulfilling the show for season 1, and I highly doubt that there's going to be a season 2 based on the ratings disaster that it is, based on the critics really calling the show out for what it is.
Then came the moment that changed everything and turned Dominique from a struggling actress into a viral meme that would haunt her career forever. During a live Marvel panel at a major convention that was supposed to generate positive buzz and hype the future of Ironheart's character in the MCU, Dominique found herself facing a hostile crowd that wasn't interested in softball questions or promotional fluff. Instead, they fired uncomfortable, pointed questions about the show's terrible reviews, the negative fan reception, and whether she understood why audiences were rejecting her character so completely. Professional cameras and dozens of phones captured every devastating second. As the pressure mounted visibly on her face, her practiced smile began to fade and crack. Her voice started to shake, and her eyes filled with tears that she couldn't hide from the audience. In a moment that instantly went viral and changed her public image forever, Dominique completely broke down in front of hundreds of people, openly crying while struggling to answer basic questions about her own show. The clip spread like wildfire across TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter within hours of the panel ending, generating millions of views and thousands of reaction videos from content creators who either showed sympathy or ruthlessly mocked her apparent inability to handle criticism. Instead of generating the compassion and support she desperately needed, the public meltdown amplified the narrative that she simply wasn't mentally tough enough to carry a major franchise or handle the pressures of Marvel stardom. Headlines across entertainment media described her as crumbling under pressure and breaking down in public, while crying Ironheart memes swept across every social media platform, turning her most vulnerable moment into internet comedy gold.
Certain is that this is a show that nobody asked for. This is also a show that is based on a comic back in 2016 that was canceled, quite frankly. That's also another fact that people have to realize. But focusing on Disney CEO Bob Iger and Kevin Feige, they are desperately trying to oversell this show to a degree that we have never seen before.
If you're shocked by how ugly this situation has already gotten, smash that like button because what I'm about to reveal next about Anthony Ramos will blow your mind. And subscribe so you never miss the real stories Hollywood doesn't want you to know. But here's where this story gets really ugly and reveals the toxic dynamics that were festering behind the scenes throughout the entire production. Anthony Ramos had entered the Ironheart project with sky-high expectations and genuine excitement, believing that his complex role as the Hood would launch him as Marvel's next great villain and give him the kind of mainstream recognition that transforms careers overnight. Instead of getting buzz, praise, and media attention for his nuanced performance and compelling character development, absolutely all anyone could talk about was Dominique's endless controversies, public missteps, and the growing backlash against her character. Behind closed doors and away from the cameras, sources close to the production claim that Ramos grew increasingly frustrated and resentful, allegedly placing the blame squarely on Dominique's shoulders for poisoning fan opinion and destroying the show's reputation before it even had a chance to succeed on its own merits. Friends and industry contacts close to Ramos began whispering to reporters and bloggers that he felt completely robbed of his breakout moment, cheated out of the career-defining opportunity he'd worked years to earn, all because his co-stars' public image disasters and controversial statements had overshadowed his work and made the entire project toxic in the eyes of audiences. The tension between them became so thick and uncomfortable that it affected their on-screen chemistry, and even casual viewers could sense that something was seriously wrong with their dynamic. During joint promotional interviews, the awkward body language was impossible to ignore, with Dominique appearing defensive and constantly on edge while Anthony looked detached, uncomfortable, and eager to distance himself from her whenever possible.
So let's get into this. Now, one thing about Bob Iger is that we know that I, along with many others out there, like to call him Bob Liger, because all this guy does is lie to the audience, he lies to the shareholders, he lies to anybody out there, in order to really kind of string them along into the following year in hopes that they will stay around, whether it's shareholders or customers. And we already know that Disney Plus is a failing platform.
Inside Disney's corporate offices, panic had reached absolute crisis levels as executives watched their expensive investment transform into a public relations nightmare that threatened to damage the entire Marvel brand. The same executives who had once confidently touted Dominique as Marvel's exciting future and the perfect actress to carry Tony Stark's legacy were now frantically questioning whether they'd made a billion-dollar casting mistake that could haunt them for years. Emergency meetings were called at the highest levels of Disney management, with teams exploring every possible option to limit the damage, from quietly recasting Riri Williams in future projects to shelving the character entirely and pretending Ironheart never existed. Toy lines that had been manufactured months in advance were scaled back without any public announcement, leaving warehouses full of unsellable merchandise that represented millions in lost revenue. Planned promotional appearances on major talk shows and at high-profile events were canceled or minimized to avoid further embarrassing moments. And leaked insider notes obtained by entertainment journalists revealed that Disney was seriously considering drastically reducing Dominique's screen time in future Marvel crossover films and limiting her appearances to brief, non-speaking cameos that couldn't generate additional controversy. The actress who was supposed to be the next face of the MCU was now viewed as such a toxic liability that marketing departments were actively working to minimize her presence in promotional materials. Even more telling and devastating for Dominique's future prospects, multiple sources claim that Disney executives were far more enthusiastic about developing Anthony Ramos's Hood character for upcoming projects, seeing him as the salvageable piece of the wreckage. As the disaster continued to spiral completely out of control with no end in sight, explosive new speculation hit major industry blogs and entertainment news outlets that sent shockwaves through Hollywood's legal community. Detailed reports emerged claiming that Dominique and her legal team were seriously considering taking Disney to court, potentially filing a massive lawsuit for wrongful termination and workplace discrimination.
It is a failing business model for, of course, Disney. We already know that Tony Gilroy admitted to this, the guy who created the Andor series, both Season 1 and Season 2. Disney just doesn't have the amount of money that they have anymore to create all of these shows. However, interestingly enough, with the Ironheart ratings disaster only getting worse for those at Disney and Marvel,
if Marvel moved forward with plans to replace her or significantly reduce her role in future projects. Insiders with knowledge of her legal strategy told reporters that her team felt she'd been unfairly scapegoated and blamed for fundamental failures that actually stemmed from Disney's poor writing, rushed production timeline, inadequate character development, and systemic problems with how Marvel was handling their newer, more diverse characters. They argued that Disney had set her up to fail by giving her a poorly written character, weak storylines, and inadequate support during the crucial promotional period when she needed media training and better talking points. Her representatives reportedly believed they could make a strong case that Disney was using her as a convenient scapegoat for their own creative and business failures, particularly given the pattern of how other actors of color had been treated within the Marvel system. However, entertainment industry lawyers and legal experts who spoke anonymously to trade publications had serious doubts about the strength of her potential case. They argued that Dominique's own controversial public comments, numerous awkward press moments, very public emotional breakdown, and the documented negative audience reaction had given Disney more than enough legal ammunition to justify any decision to sideline her character or reduce her involvement in future projects. Most legal experts predicted that if a lawsuit did materialize and gain traction, Disney would almost certainly choose to quietly settle out of court rather than risk months of damaging headlines, depositions, and public testimony that could expose even more embarrassing internal communications and decision-making processes. Meanwhile, Anthony Ramos and his representation were already executing a carefully planned strategic escape plan designed to distance him from the disaster while positioning him for future success within the Marvel universe. His agents were working overtime behind the scenes, making calls and taking meetings to highlight him as the clear standout performer in Ironheart, pitching him directly to Marvel executives and Disney decision-makers as a versatile actor, ready to carry major villain roles in upcoming crossover films and big-budget projects.
Already those like Kevin Feige and Bob Iger are heading into damage control mode at a level that we have never seen before. In this case, Bob Iger got very defensive after the LGBTQ backlash, and also in the midst of the ratings beginning to tank already. Now, Iger recently delivered the following in a desperate move to damage control the situation.
Industry insiders reported that Ramos's team was being extremely strategic about how they discussed the Ironheart experience, emphasizing his professionalism, his compelling performance, and his potential for future development while carefully avoiding any direct criticism of Dominique that could backfire or make him appear unprofessional. If Dominique's career was collapsing under the weight of controversy and negative publicity, Ramos was making absolutely sure that he wouldn't go down with her or be associated with her failures in the minds of casting directors and executives. His representatives worked to position him as the salvageable, professional piece of the Ironheart wreckage, someone who had delivered strong work despite being trapped in a problematic project with a controversial co-star. They emphasized his theater background, his musical talents, his proven ability to handle complex characters, and most importantly, his complete lack of personal controversy or public relations disasters. The strategy appeared to be working, with multiple entertainment trade publications reporting that Marvel was indeed more interested in developing his Hood character for future appearances, seeing him as someone who could bring depth and complexity to the villain role while maintaining the professional image that Disney desperately needed from their actors. This catastrophic failure exposed something much darker and more troubling about Marvel's current state than just one bad show or one problematic actress. It revealed fundamental cracks in the foundation of an entertainment empire that had seemed unstoppable for over a decade. For more than 10 years, the MCU had appeared virtually bulletproof, turning every film into a cultural event and every character into a household name that generated billions in revenue across movies, merchandise, theme parks, and streaming content. But Ironheart became the undeniable symbol of their declining creative power and their disconnect from the audience that had made them successful in the first place. This wasn't just about one actress failing to connect with fans or one series receiving poor reviews. It was about Marvel's inability to recapture the magic that had made their earlier phases so successful, their struggles with developing new characters that audiences actually wanted to follow, and their apparent confusion about how to move forward after the conclusion of the Infinity Saga. Recent projects had already raised serious red flags among industry observers, with Eternals being widely criticized as messy and overstuffed, Ant-Man Quantumania underperforming dramatically at the box office, and Secret Invasion leaving longtime fans confused and disappointed with its execution. Each new release seemed to generate more doubt than excitement, more criticism than praise, and more questions about whether Marvel still understood what made their stories compelling. Dominique Thorne didn't just sink along with her character, she became the unfortunate face of Marvel's broader identity crisis, representing everything that longtime fans felt was wrong with the direction their beloved universe was heading. The Empire's Crown wasn't just developing small cracks that could be repaired with better writing or different casting choices, it was fundamentally shattering in ways that everyone in Hollywood could see. And the damage might be too extensive to fully repair without major changes to how Disney approaches their most valuable entertainment property.